Silas Calloway folds a letter once and sets it on the table between them. Nora stops washing her hands. Doesn't touch it. Doesn't ask who it's from. He says her father's name anyway. The room doesn't change, but the reason they married does. And now their marriage has to decide what it was really for. Out here, safety isn't a feeling. It's an arrangement you make and keep quiet about. Nora Fletcher has been married for 2 years to a ranch hand who asked no questions and made no demands. Silas Calloway gave her distance from town, a locked door at night, and a life that didn't pry. She gave him her name and her word. They've lived carefully, kindly, apart, even when they're together. But the thing that forced their vows into place is gone now. The threat that made silence sensible has ended. What remains is a marriage built on not asking and not answering. Trust like that doesn't break loudly. It thins. This is the moment when marriage can no longer be protected by avoidance. Silas unhooks the lantern and sets it on the table beside supper. Nora stands at the basin, sleeves rolled, water dripping from her hands to the floor. The kettle ticks. A horse shifts in the yard. He doesn't sit, doesn't eat. He places the letter where she can see it. Not close, not far. I rode into town, he says. That's all. She dries her hands on her apron. Doesn't reach for the paper. 2 years of living together has taught them when not to step. It came for you, he adds. Nora nods once. The kind of nod that closes a door instead of opening one. She takes a chair across from him, but keeps her hands folded in her lap. Silas watches the letter instead of her face. The seal is broken. He didn't mean to read it. He read it anyway. Your father passed, he says. The words sit between them, plain and heavy. She doesn't look away, doesn't ask how, doesn't thank him for telling her. She breathes in, then out, careful as setting glass down. That's settled. Then, she says, he hears what she didn't say. He hears the space opening where something used to press. The kettle stops ticking. Silence moves in to take its place. Silas reaches for the letter, then stops. Nora pushes her chair back and stands. I'll clear the table, she says, already doing it. He lets her. He always has. The reason they married is gone now. Neither of them says it. But the quiet that once kept them safe stays too long, and costs more than it ever did before. Nora folds the blanket at the foot of the bed before sunrise. Silas is already dressed. Boots on. Shirt buttoned wrong once, then fixed. He watches her hands move, precise and unhurried, as if the night ended cleanly. She carries a blanket to the chair instead of the trunk. Leaves it there. A small decision that means she plans to return. I'll ride in today, she says, tying her hair back. There are things to see to. He nods. Town has always been hers to avoid or approach. He's never made it his business. I can go with you, he offers, careful. She pauses. Not long. Just enough. No, she says. It's not necessary. The word lands harder than she intends. Necessary has always been their measure. Shelter was necessary. Distance was necessary. Silence, too. Silas pulls on his coat. The leather creaks in the cold. All right. They eat without sitting. Bread torn, not cut. Coffee swallowed hot. The door stands open longer than usual, letting the morning in. At the threshold, Nora stops. You don't have to come to the service, she says. I won't expect it. He looks at her then. Really looks. I know, he says. That's the trouble. He always knows what isn't required. He's built their marriage around it. She steps outside. Frost bites at the hem of her skate. The horse stamps once, impatient. Silas hands her the reins without touching her fingers. Be back before dark, he says, out of habit. She meets his eyes. I always am. She rides out alone. Dust rises and settles again. Silas stands in the doorway long after she's gone. The house feels larger. Not emptier, just less decided. For the first time, he understands that kindness without claim has its own cost, and that by asking nothing, he may already be losing more than he meant to give. Silas splits with behind the house as the sun climbs. The axe falls clean. The log cracks. He stacks the pieces two straight, then knocks one loose and leaves it crooked. The wind carries a sound of hooves from the road. He waits. The sound passes. By noon, the yard is cleared. By mid-afternoon, the horses are fed. Nothing asked for him. That's new. He goes inside and sets another place at the table. Then stops. Takes it away. When Nora returns, the light is already thinning. She ties the horse and stands with her back to him a moment longer than needed. Her shoulders hold steady. Her dress smells of dust and cold air. Town didn't soften her. You ride easy, he asks. Yes. He could ask more. He doesn't. She pours water and drinks without sitting. Her eyes move through the room, measuring what's the same. The letter is gone. The chair is pushed in. They said kind things. She offers, unprompted. He nods. They usually do. Silence stretches. It used to mean safety. Tonight, it leans. I won't be staying over there again, she says. Sudden, there's no reason. He hears it as an opening. He also hears it as an ending. All right, he answers, too quickly. She looks at him then. Really looks. Something flickers and settles. You don't ever ask, she says. Not accusing. Testing. He rests his hands on the table. Would worn smooth by years. I didn't want to press. I didn't want you to disappear, she says, quiet. The space between them tightens. Not enough to touch. Enough to feel. Silas draws a breath. If you want to tell me. She lifts a hand. Stops him. Not yet. He lets the words fall back. The moment closes. The cost sharpens. They eat in careful quiet. When night comes, it brings no answers, only the knowledge that waiting has become a choice, and neither of them is sure who it's protecting anymore. Silas lifts the saddle onto the rail and tightens a cinch. The leather pulls firm under his hands. The horse shifts, uneasy. Morning carries the smell of cold iron and hay. Nora stands near the porch, watching without stepping closer. I'll check the south fence, he says. Might be down again. She nods, then says, I can come. He hesitates. Just a beat. It's rough riding. I've ridden worse. That's true. He knows it. He also knows this isn't about fences. He shakes his head once. I won't be long. Her mouth tightens. Not anger. Restraint. She turns back to the house. The decision made for her. Silas mounts and rides out. The land opens wide, familiar. He knows every bend, every place where the wire sags. Work steadies him. It always has. At the fence line, he stops and dismounts. The wire is intact. Nothing needs fixing. He stays anyway. He thinks of the letter, of how easily her life before him disappeared from the table, of how little of himself is ever set down beside her. By the time he returns, the sun has climbed higher than it should have. Nora is in the yard, hanging clothes. The line is full. No space left. You found trouble? She asks. No. She studies his face. Then why stay gone? He opens his mouth, closes it. The truth presses, not loud, but firm. I didn't know what you'd need from me, he says at last. The wind lifts a sheet between them. Cloth snaps once. Sharp. I don't know either, she replies. But I can't tell if you're waiting or avoiding. He has no answer ready. That's the answer. She turns back to her work. Silas stands there, understanding too late that the ground he keeps choosing is the one where nothing is required, and nothing is promised. Nora sets the kettle on before Silas comes in. The stove catches low. Flame breathes under iron. She doesn't look at the door when it opens, but she knows his step. She always has. He hangs his coat. Takes longer than needed. There's a service marker coming up, he says. For your father. She nods, keeps her hands busy. I know. I could ride you in, he adds. The offer is plain, unadorned. She turns then, not away, toward him. I didn't ask. I know. The kettle begins to tick. The sound fills the space between them. She pours water anyway. Steam rises and fades. You've never asked me anything, she says. Not once. Not about before. Not about why I needed to leave. His jaw tightens. He doesn't interrupt. I told myself that was kindness, she continues, that you were letting me be. He steps closer. Not enough to crowd her. Enough to be counted. And now, he asks. She holds the cup with both hands. Now I don't know if you stayed because you wanted me, or because I didn't require anything else. The words land clean. No heat. That's what makes them hard to bear. Silas exhales. I thought if I asked, you'd hear it as debt. I hear silence as distance, she says. They stand there, close enough that the space has shape. For the first time, neither of them looks away. What would you have me ask? He says, careful. She swallows. The moment trembles. Ask me to stay, she answers. Not because I have nowhere else to go. The kettle whistles sharp and sudden. Silas reaches past her and pulls it off the stove. He doesn't speak right away. When he finally does, the words cost him. Stay, he says. Silas stands where he said it and doesn't move. The word still hangs between them, bare and exposed. Nora doesn't reach for it. She watches his face instead, as if weighing whether he understands what is offered. Say it again, she says. He swallows. The room feels smaller. Stay, he repeats, slower this time, because I want you here. Her breath catches, not enough to hear, enough to matter. And if I don't, she asks. He nods once. Then I'll know what I'm losing. That's new. Not protection. Not patience. Risk. She sets a cup down. Her hand shakes before she stills it against the table. I don't know how to give you what you didn't ask for before. I'm not asking for what's past, he says. I'm asking for what comes next. The fire settles. Wood pops once. Outside, a gate creaks in the wind and closes on its own. Nora steps back. Not away. Sideways, creating room where there wasn't any. If I stay for you, she says, it won't be quiet. I won't be careful the way I was. Silas meets her eyes. I don't want careful. That costs him more than he expected. He feels it immediately. She nods once. A decision, not a promise. I'll go to the market tomorrow, she says. Then I'll come home. Home. She hasn't used the word before. Silas doesn't answer right away. He lets the sound of it settle, knowing it can be taken back. When he finally speaks, it's steady. I'll be here. They don't touch. They don't close the distance. But something has shifted, not toward certainty, but toward consequence. From now on, silence will mean refusal. And neither of them can afford that anymore. Nora saddles a horse at first light. The leather is stiff with cold. Her fingers work the strap slower than usual. Silas stands near the fence, not offering help, not turning away. I won't be long, she says. He nods. I know. That answer carries more than time. She rides out without looking back. The road is familiar, but it feels narrower. Every mile carries the same question, unanswered and pressing. By midday, she stands before the marker. Plain wood, her father's name cut shallow. The wind moves through the grass and doesn't stop. She doesn't kneel. She doesn't speak. There's nothing left to settle here. What bound her to fear is finished. What bound her to Silas is not. When she returns, the sun is already dropping. Silas is repairing the gate. He looks up when he hears her horse. Doesn't smile. Doesn't ask. She dismounts and rests a hand on the saddle longer than needed. I'm back, she says. He studies her face. You look different. She steps closer. Not tentative. Deliberate. I stayed because I wanted to, she says. Not because I was afraid to leave. His breath shifts. He nods once, absorbing the weight of it. That changes things, he says. Yes, she replies. It makes them heavier. They stand there, the gate half-fixed, the day unfinished. Nora reaches for the latch and closes it herself. The click is final. Staying isn't relief. It's commitment. And now that she's chosen it freely, the marriage asks more than shelter. It asks truth, at a cost neither of them has finished counting yet. Nora clears the table before Silas finishes eating. Plates stack. Cutlery clinks once, sharp in the quiet. She doesn't rush, but she doesn't linger either. When she sits, it's across from him, not beside. "There's something I never said," she begins. Silas stills, hands flat on the table. He doesn't nod, doesn't urge her on. He stays where he is. "I didn't marry you because I trusted you," she says. "Not at first." The words land without apology. "I married you because you were there, because you didn't look at me the way others did, because you didn't ask why I was afraid." He lets the truth stand. That's the price of asking. She draws a breath. "And then I stayed because it worked, because nothing pressed, because I could forget what I came from." Silas swallows. "I let that be enough." "Yes," she says, "you did." The fire shifts. A log settles inward. The room holds. "I didn't know how to want more without losing what I had," she continues. "And you never made me choose." Silas leans back. The chair creaks under him. "I thought if I did, you'd leave." She meets his eyes. "I might have." That's the truth that tightens the air. Silas nods once. "And now?" She doesn't answer right away. She reaches across the table and places a hand near his. Not touching, close enough to matter. "Now I'm choosing," she says. "But I won't do it alone." He looks at her hand, then at her face. For the first time, what's spoken doesn't close the distance. It defines it, and in doing so, makes clear how much they stand to lose if either of them steps back again. Silas brings a ledger in from the shelf and sets it on the table. Dust lifts and settles. The book lands heavier than it should. Nora watches him do it, unsure why this matters. Yet, "I keep this of the place," he says. "Feed, repairs, what's owed." She nods. Ranch business has always been his language. He opens the ledger and turns it toward her. Names, numbers, margins thin enough to worry a man who plans to stay. "I never put your name in it," he continues. "Didn't feel like my right." Her brow tightens. "It is my name." "I know that now." He slides a pencil across the table. It stops near hand. "If you're staying," he says, "then this isn't just mine to manage quietly. It's ours to risk." Nora doesn't take the pencil right away. She studies the page, the steady hand that kept this place running without asking anything from her. "You're giving up control," she says. He nods. "I already have. I'm just naming it." She picks up the pencil. The wood is worn smooth. She hesitates, not from fear, but from understanding the cost. When she writes a name, it's careful, deliberate. She doesn't flourish it. She doesn't hide. Silas exhales when the pencil leaves the page. "This doesn't make us safe," she says. "No," he agrees. "It makes us honest." She closes the ledger herself and pushes it back toward him. The gesture is small. It changes the shape of the room. Outside, the wind moves through the grass. The house creaks once, settling. For years, Silas protected her by not seeing too much. Tonight, he risks the opposite, letting her see where it's vulnerable and trusting she won't step away from it. The marriage doesn't feel lighter for it. It feels real. Nora steps into town with Silas beside her. Boots strike the boardwalk in uneven rhythm. Voices slow as they pass. A few heads turn. This isn't how they're usually seen. Together, unhurried, unhidden. At the Mercantile, Silas pauses. "You don't have to come in." She looks at him. "I know." She goes in anyway. The bell rings sharp above the door. Inside smells of flour and oil. The clerk nods to Silas, then to Nora, a second longer than politeness requires. "What can I get you?" he asks. Nora answers before Silas can. "Coffee and sugar." The clerk blinks, writes it down. Silas watches her speak, watches how easily the space adjusts around her when she doesn't step back. Outside, the package is handed over. paid for from the shared ledger. Nora takes it and tucks it under her arm. You didn't flinch, Silas says as they walk. She doesn't pretend otherwise. I felt it. They pass the churchyard. The marker stands visible from the road. Nora doesn't turn toward it. I won't hide anymore, she says. Not defiant, decided. Not from them. Not from you. Silas stops walking. The boardwalk creaks under his weight. That means they'll see us, he says. All of it. I know. He studies her face, searches for hesitation, finds none. He nods once. Then so will I. They walk on, closer now, not touching, but aligned. By the time they leave town, word has already begun to move. There's no pulling it back, no returning to quiet usefulness. Nora feels the cost settle in her chest. Marriage isn't shelter anymore. It's position, presence, exposure. She doesn't ask if it's ready. Silas doesn't ask her to slow. What they've chosen today will follow them home, and stay. Silas opens the door and steps aside. Nora enters first. The house smells the same, wood smoke, coffee, dust, but it doesn't receive her the way it used to. It doesn't let her pass unnoticed. She sets the parcels on the table, unwraps them slowly. Sugar poured into the tin. Coffee hung on its nail. Each sound lands sharper than before. Silas closes the door. The latch clicks. Final. They'll talk, he says. They always have, she answers. Just not where I could hear it. He leans against the wall, arms loose at his sides. Not guarding. Waiting. I can still keep things quiet, he offers. The old instinct. The familiar shelter. Nora turns. Meets him fully. I don't want quiet bought with distance anymore. The words don't accuse. They decide. Silas nods. He lets the offer fall away. That cost him more than refusal would have. She moves through the room, touching what she once avoided claiming. The chair by the window, the shelf she never stocked, the space beside the bed she never arranged. This was always your house, she says. I lived in it carefully. And now? She stops at the table, puts her hands flat on the wood. Now I'm staying where I stand. Silas crosses the room. Not fast, not hesitant. He stops close enough that the space between them has weight. Then I won't stand apart, he says. They face each other in the lamplight. No touching, no retreat. The house settles around them, unfamiliar in its honesty. Marriage, once a place to hide, has become a place to be seen. And neither of them can step back into the old shape without breaking what they've just claimed. Silas sits on the edge of the bed and pulls off his boots. Leather thumps against the floor. Nora stands by the window, watching night gather. Lamplight holds him in separate halves of the room. I need to ask you something, he says. She turns. Doesn't speak. He keeps his eyes on the floor a moment longer than needed, then lifts them. If you're staying, I can't keep choosing quiet over you. Her breath steadies. I know. I need to know what you expect from me, he continues. Not as protection, as your husband. The word lands heavier than any before. She crosses the room and sits beside him, not touching, close enough that the space is accounted for. I expect you to stand when it costs you, she says, to let me see when you're afraid, to ask instead of waiting. He nods, and if I fail, she doesn't soften it, then I'll know where I stand. Silas absorbs that. The risk sharpens. This isn't shelter anymore. It's obligation. He draws a breath. Then I expect the same. She meets his eyes, holds them. You'll have it. He reaches out then, not to pull her close, not to claim, but to rest his hand over hers. The contact is brief, intentional. Outside, a coyote calls once. Distant. 4 years. Silas proved love by asking nothing. Tonight, he asks to be met, and in doing so, gives up the last place he could hide. What they are building now isn't safe. It's shared. Nora lifts the quilt and lays it flat across the bed. The motion is simple, decisive. No careful edge left hanging. Silas watches from the chair, hands resting on his knees, as if waiting for instruction he knows won't come. She turns to him. I'm not staying because it's easier, she says. I know, he answers. I'm staying because I want this marriage, she continues. Not the shelter of it, the work. The word lands between them and doesn't soften. Silas stands. The floorboard creaks under his weight. Then I won't offer you escape anymore. That costs him. He feels it as he says it. Nora steps closer. This time, she doesn't stop short. She rests her forehead briefly against his chest. Not comfort, confirmation. Then she steps back again. If I leave someday, she says, it won't be because you didn't ask. He nods. And if you stay, it won't be because you had nowhere else to go. They stand there, the last of the distance gone but not erased. Marriage doesn't close around them like protection. It opens. Nora reaches for the lamp and turns it low. The room settles into shadow, edges softened but not hidden. She moves toward the bed. Silas follows, not behind, not ahead, but beside her. Nothing is promised beyond this choice. But for the first time, the reason they married no longer holds them together. What remains is what they've chosen, with eyes open, voices used, and the understanding that marriage, once risked, cannot be carried quietly again. If you love stories like this, you're welcome here. Subscribe if you want more Western romances. And if this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments. I'll see it. I'm your narrator, Sam. Until the next road.